something bad to us, we are going to do things to you that have never been done before.
Well, good afternoon, folks. A little bit later than expected. In fact, probably an hour and 20 minutes from that, which I told you yesterday. But things be where it was today. Needed to go and attend a birthday party luncheon. And I think the now reinstated Dr. William Bay had some other plans for lunch as well today. So it sort of worked out well in the end. We finally managed to hook up. And let's get him on the show straight away, shall we? Shall wait no longer. Congratulations, reinstated Dr. William Bay. Billy, congratulations.
Thanks
Yesterday
so much,
must have been a great day for you, your close supporters, and your family, of course. Just for those people who've been living in a cave for the last 24 hours or who only get their news from mainstream media, who have not, as far as I can tell, whispered one word of your win yesterday in the Supreme Court of Queensland. Can you just take us through? Well, actually, before you take us through the judgment, explain to us, what's the last 2 and a bit years of your life been like since you stood up at an AMA meeting and declared yourself to be a good human being and someone who didn't want to hurt others, and you urged your colleagues at that meeting, including the woman in charge of the AMA at the time, what was her name? Anne Tonkin, Professor Anne Tonkin. And you were escorted out of that meeting. And since then, well, you've had your credentials suspended. You're unable to work. You've been pilloried. And, well, you know better than me. Tell us what's happened.
Yeah, it's been 2 years of fire, 2 years of trial by fire on the battlefield of truth and justice. AHPRA, the medical regulator in Australia, and the Medical Board of Australia did everything they possibly could to grind me into oblivion, to take away my hope, to take away my finances, to take away my career, both as a doctor and also apparently any job whatsoever connected to health. And usually this type of strategy works. They're a big entity with many dozens of lawyers on the payroll. They've got a huge budget. And when they emergency suspend a doctor like myself, they take away pretty much everything. And my job, as given to me by my Savior, Jesus Christ, was to resist their bullying, was to resist their threats to my physical safety, and just keep the faith in God, keep the faith in freedom, keep the faith in Australia, and even keep the faith in the judiciary and fight on for justice. And I'm so pleased to see that God and the judiciary came out in spades for me yesterday and granted me not just a victory to unsuspend me, but God blessing the justice cancelled the investigation into me. And he backdated both of those decisions, so as if they never occurred, from August of 2022, which means I should be entitled to lots of compensation. And he even cancelled my professional misconduct trial in the Queensland Tribunal. And just to make sure there was no doubts about the supremacy of this victory, he awarded costs to me. And he said, if there are any costs owing to Queensland, I don't have to pay them. AHPRA has to on my behalf. So fantastic result all round.
You couldn't have asked for, prayed for a better result. And you mentioned the judiciary there a couple of times, and I'll be honest with you, like many others, I have lost faith in the judiciary, particularly the top end of town in the judiciary. But clearly there does seem to be some people who are open to common sense, open to truth and honesty, as opposed to the lies and deception that were propagated by AHPRA through your entire profession. Now, I was contacted yesterday afternoon, just after your win, by a very concerned follower of yours, but a colleague and a nurse, and I want to say she's probably a nurse practitioner in South Australia. Now, she's been in a similar situation to you, I think, and been through the courts on a couple of occasions. Your result will have an impact on others from within the medical profession who've found themselves deregistered or they retired early. I suppose that might be a different sort of thing, but nurses particularly who were pushed out of work and have been kept actively out of work because their files were marked with a black, you were let go for a disciplinary reason, I think is how they put it on the Queensland medical files. So the disciplinary reason was you refused to take the jab. And therefore, because of disciplinary reasons, you cannot be considered for a job back inside Queensland Health. Now, will your result have an impact for others who are suffering that kind of injustice?
Absolutely, because my result, which is in a Supreme Court of a state of Australia, can certainly set a precedent in Queensland, and the states and around Australia can take into consideration my matter as well in any cases in those states about the fact that AHPRA, as a government corporation masquerading as a national entity, must abide by the law. That was essentially the ruling in this, in my case, is that AHPRA aren't all powerful. They're not God. They have to abide by Australian law. And so all practitioners who've had some dealings with AHPRA, I would suggest they ask their lawyers or they look at their own cases if they're self-represented and see whether AHPRA has overstepped the bounds in regards to the law in their own cases. And you know what? I'm pretty sure they have. AHPRA has been caught with their hands in the cookie jar in my matter, primarily because, Carl, most people go on the defensive and defend their suspension or their conditions in a tribunal. And the thing with the tribunal, as the High Court has ruled, is they are not courts. They are administrative bodies. They are arms of the government. And so how can you expect any level of impartiality there when tribunals are not courts? And that was one of my key arguments in my Supreme Court trial. And that was, in fact, one of AHPRA's, if not their key argument, is that I should have pursued this matter not in the Supreme Court, but in QCAT, the Queensland Tribunal. And why? Because they didn't want me in the Supreme Court. They didn't want me in the Supreme Court because I could expose their evil. I could expose their corruption. I could expose their bias. I could expose their procedural fairness. None of these things you can expose in the tribunal, not just because they're not a court, but because, believe it or not, you don't even get a chance to. The whole decision to suspend or deregister is set aside, and what's called a de novo decision is made, where the decision is made anew, afresh. And so that's why AHPRA has always been let off the hook in these matters, because they've never been on the hook. But they were on the hook with me this time because I never gave in and let them take me to the tribunal. I never even tried to appeal my matter to the tribunal because I always knew that I was in the right. And so why would I go on the defensive and try and appeal a decision in a governmental administrative body? No, I wanted the judiciary to step in to review the legality of what they've done. And yesterday, the justice was very disappointed in the actions of AHPRA, found it profoundly disappointing. It's a wonderful judgment that everybody should read. It's available on the internet, Bay versus AHPRA 2024. And you'll see that Professor Anne Tonkin, the Medical Board Chair of Australia, who just resigned, by the way, less than 2 weeks ago, in perhaps anticipation of this ruling, was found to have been involved in complicitness, in corruption, in bias regarding the censorship of myself as a doctor. And so this is a great win for all health practitioners in Australia. And I encourage everybody to have a look at their cases if they've got one and fight back against AHPRA, because that's how we will win.
So this particular judge criticised the regulators for their animus and their combative approach toward you.
Yes.
They are strong terms coming from a Supreme Court judge. And people, like you say, should take strong note of that because have you heard whether or not AHPRA plan to appeal? Are they going to drag this process out on you for the next 10 years?
Oh, look, if they think they have grounds for appeal, it's their legal right to try to appeal. But I'm quite confident that they've done the wrong thing and they should learn from this now and take a hit to the chin and move on to more sensible things. If they want to play funny games and go on with this scenario, then I welcome it. I'm ready for a fight. I'm ready to fight on, and I will take them down eventually, inevitably, because as always, I have truth and God on my side. We have that on our side. So they just literally cannot win. All they can do is delay, 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 bully, 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 and try and get away with it, but they have not yesterday, and they want to try again the same old playbook. Let them try, Carl. They cannot win.
Yeah.
The sooner they realise that, the better. And maybe that they've got a new medical board chair and a new, actually, the CEO has stepped down as well, Martin Fletcher. He's gone. So we've got a new CEO, we've got a new chair of the medical board. Perhaps they don't want to get involved with Dr. William Bay anymore, and we can put this matter to the side and let doctors just be doctors and speak the truth about these so-called bioweapon vaccines.
So I'm hoping that your phone rang off the hook yesterday afternoon with all your doctor colleagues ringing to congratulate you and offer you positions for your capability level around the country or around the state. Has that happened?
No. I have had many congratulatory calls from leaders of the freedom movement, from lawyers, from my family and friends. But as always, and unfortunately, so there does seem to be a absence of support from the medical community. That's all right, Carl. We will persist on. We'll just have to wake them up yet again.
Well, it adds to your case going forward. You mentioned compensation before, and I know you don't bring it up with greed in your heart. The fact of the matter is, you have been stopped from doing that which you've loved to do. You've set a career up to do for the last 2 years. You've had no financial resources other than what you could scrape together through friends, family, and going around the country explaining your situation to people everywhere, not just in the state of Queensland. I think the first time we ran into each other was in Coffs Harbour, might have been, at an event down there. But you've been all over the place, and your particular problem wasn't unique to Queensland. It affected every doctor in every town, from big city to small town around this country. And I think what you did was help raise the awareness of just how little the local doctor was actually doing for people. So going forward, your reputation has taken quite a battering in the last couple of years, and there will be those died on professors and leaders supposedly in the medical fraternity who have grown up, worked with, and probably potentially taken a brown bag or two from members of that AHPRA board over their days. They're going to make sure that you do not get any kind of a job in Queensland Health. So going forward, what would be your biggest hope? Do you want to get back into the mainline medicine? I mean, I know that you were working in a couple of different roles in different places prior to this, but do you want to get back into mainline or administration medicine, or where is your future, and how realistic is it to expect that you'll get back into it here in Queensland at least?
Yeah. First, I just want to correct something. I haven't been contacted by current working doctor colleagues, but I have been contacted by suspended and deregistered and defamed and diminished and destructed doctors who've all suffered from AHPRA. So that's where the support has been from and is coming from. And I thank all those colleagues like Dr. Mark Hobart, Dr. Duncan Syme, Dr. Chris Neal, and others who have supported me through this journey. But we need the doctors who are working, who haven't suffered from AHPRA, to get on our team, to realise that it could be any one of them at any time. They could be in trouble from AHPRA, but that's why we need to push back all the time for the principles of freedom of speech, informed consent, the primacy of the doctor-patient relationship. And my future, I would hope, Carl, is that I can get not just back into clinical practice soon. I would be looking at maybe doing some telehealth work, I think, to reach as many patients as possible across the country, if not around the world. And I want to, importantly, have a role to play in modifying the medical regulatory system in Australia so it's more compassionate, more considering of patients' needs, more considering of doctors and nurses in their situations, but it's more fair and reasonable and lawful, of course. So my dream would be to be involved in the restructuring of the medical regulator in Australia.
I know that you've got some political contacts now, Malcolm Roberts amongst them. I'm sure you will have heard from him, if not already, then in the very near future. Do you see a political future for yourself at all with possibly One Nation, but any other party, at least that seems to be on the side of good and God? That doesn't leave you too many to choose from in Australia, I'll be honest. Do you have any thoughts in that direction?
Yeah. Well, actually, I just came from a lunch where there was a launching of Senator Jared Rennick's new party, People First. And I found the policies that his party is putting forward very enticing and very encouraging of Australian families and people who want to be self-reliant, make their own businesses or have strong income from their jobs. And also, he sold me when he said that one of the policies is to dismantle AHPRA completely. So I'm pretty sure I'm going to be joining his party in the not too distant future, Carl, because that's exactly what I want to do, is to make sure that families are treated fairly, patients are treated properly, and we all have a future in this country that's based on reasonable ethics, freedom, and the love of God in this country.
So does that mean you will stand come election time in the a Senate or a House seat in Queensland, obviously, for the People First Party?
Well, that'll be a decision for Jared and for the party to make. My step first is to commit to them, and we'll see where that takes us. But the main thing is that, as the party name suggests, to focus on the people, to make sure they're served first. And that's what's wrong with the health law in Australia at the moment. It literally says that the primacy, the most paramount principle of the health law in Australia is the confidence in the government and the confidence in the public health system. I mean, that is absolutely ridiculous. How can you treat people safely? How can you make sure your grandmother is safe when all the doctor is thinking about is, will AHPRA suspend me? Will AHPRA come after me? Will AHPRA think that I'm disparaging the government or the big pharma? That's what's needs to be changed. So if I was elected, I would be pushing for changes to the law where we put the people, that is the patient, first.
Your case in the Supreme Court has laid open the inner workings of AHPRA to a certain degree. They have been shown to be inept.
Yes.
They have been shown to be unqualified in just about every case. And yet this, group of, I want to call them criminals, that might be overstating it fractionally, they seem to be able to get away with anything until now. This decision of yours has exposed AHPRA for the pure, shiny bum, bureaucrat, administration, paid job for the boys kind of position that it really is, hasn't it?
Yep. Absolutely. And again, the reason that they were getting away with it in the past, apart from the fact that they're big bullies with the big resources, is that they always were able to get these cases into the tribunal. And that is what we need to do in the future, is bring these matters to review by the courts, where rules of evidence come into play, where the laws are looked at, where the Constitution is looked at as well. Now, I wasn't successful on my constitutional points, or so it seems, according to the judgment, but there is work that can be done on that. And if we start attacking on these constitutional areas, then perhaps gains can be made there as well. What's important is that a chink in their armor has been ripped open and they've been perhaps mortally wounded and they're falling to the ground. It's now time for all the doctors and nurses to bring the fight to AHPRA, because every nurse or doctor or psychologist that brings an action against AHPRA is another one that they'll have to defend. And even though they have a huge budget, there's only so much defense they can do before they're ground down and suffer the same fate like they used to do to every health practitioner, which is grind them through endurance, make the process a punishment, right? We need to turn the tables on them and make the legal system the punishment for AHPRA until they're so despondent, so demoralized that the whole system just collapses, and the public will call for a new AHPRA or a new medical regulator to be begun. So that's what we need to do, is keep the pressure on these people and hold them to account. Accountability is what the people have been asking for, and accountability is what has been given yesterday by the court.
Is AHPRA accountable to the health minister, the federal health minister, or are they just simply a bureaucratic construct accountable to no one and nothing in particular?
It's quite genius how this health practitioner regulation national law has constructed AHPRA. What it did was bring the ministers, the health ministers of every state and the Federation, the Commonwealth of Australia, together to run AHPRA in what's called the Health Ministers Meeting, the HMM. They meet together and set policy for AHPRA and the medical board, and also make appointments and other decisions. And yet they cannot be held accountable, because this health ministers meeting is a multi-governmental national cabinet type structure where it's not federal and it's not state. And I tried my hardest in court to have that declared unconstitutional. However, unfortunately, the justice wasn't prepared to rule on that. Maybe that's something that can be taken up again in the future, but I think it's outrageous that no single politician, neither my state member, Stephen Miles, neither my federal member, Luke Howarth, was willing to take any responsibility whatsoever with the corruption that's now been proved about AHPRA, because they just wrote back to me and said, oh, it's not my responsibility, it's not my scope, because it's not a state issue and it's not a federal issue, it's a national issue. So that's how they get away with it. They probably love it, Carl, because they can issue orders and never be held accountable. That has got to change, and that would be another thing that I would seek to change if elected next year.
So you've already got your first vote. Cooker28 in the chat has said they're very happy to vote for you first up, and I think there's one or two throwing their hands up behind you. So you're already on your way, and that is great. I don't think we could ask for a better person to speak on behalf of all Australians medically. You've shown you're a man of honour and you're prepared to fight, and in fact you are prepared to fight and save your own money, or at least not go into debt. When I called you yesterday, I said, oh, look, I won't hold you up. I know you'll be off celebrating with your lawyers. And you said, well, the only lawyer you've got is yourself and God. You have done all this by yourself. There are no common law tricks that you've done. You've played in their courts and done their rules, and you have come through on top here. There must have been low periods for you during this last 2 years. First of all, do you recall a low point now? What was the lowest point? Did you ever get to a point where you think, oh, shit, they've got me, I'm going to go and get a forklift license?
Oh, I'm laughing because, would you believe, my lowest point was literally the day before I found out that this judgment was coming on Friday. So I'm talking Wednesday. So, so right at the end, at 2 years, 4 months later, I'd run out of all my donors' money. I'd run out of all my Bitcoin trading money, and I was having to resort to Uber Eats driving to survive. And I just found it very difficult. Carl, I don't know if I probably had become weak and lazy in my lack of work, that it wasn't my choice for the last 2.5 years. I couldn't work anywhere. I applied for dozens, hundreds of jobs, completely blacklisted across the country. Couldn't even become a baggage handler at the Brisbane airport. That's how impugned my name was. And I just thought, what's it all for? But as always, it all came back to my choice was to fight for justice and freedom and for the rights of patients, because God asked me to. And I was so happy to do so. And so when I walked into that court yesterday, I decided that whatever the result is, it doesn't matter. I'm happy. I'm okay. I've got barely enough money to survive now with this Uber Eats. I don't need anything anymore. It's all good, man. It's all okay. And so when the judgment came through, it wasn't just a win, but a supreme win. I was like, thank you, Jesus. That is amazing. Really, thank you so much.
But once again, the money hasn't fallen into your account miraculously overnight, although I did notice that you are now back up on the registrations list of registered doctors in this country. Is there a point yesterday afternoon you went and had a look on your phone and just thought, shit really done it here.
Well, as always, there are those who oppose me and oppose people in the freedom community. And there were some people saying that my declaration of victory was not true, that it was a fraud or a psyop. And they had taken a screenshot of the AHPRA register to show that I was still suspended. So I went on there on the AHPRA webpage to see if whether they had updated it or not. And to my surprise, AHPRA had done the right thing, so perhaps they are learning, and they updated the register immediately. And that's because not only did I get my suspension overturned yesterday, the judge had backdated it to the 17th of August, 2022. So the great news is I don't have to complete any more tests or continuing professional development or any other hoops that AHPRA may have wanted to throw at me, which would be the normal way for doctors to come back. I've been completely exonerated, so I can go back to work. The only sort of sad thing is that I was in the Royal Australian College of General Practitioners, RACGP, but they kicked me out in 2022, and they kicked me out and said that if I was to win my case miraculously, they wouldn't let me back in. I would have to reapply and go through all their hoops and stuff, which is basically an impossibility. So very disappointing by the RACGP, and maybe I'll have to sue them as well, because it's so shocking how little regard these colleges and these medical regulators have for the concept of innocence before guilt, that you have to actually prove guilt. In open court, the barrister for AHPRA actually told the judge that when accusing people in Australia, you do not have to have a base for your allegations. There is no need to presume innocence. He literally said this. The judge could not believe what he was saying. He said, "Can you say that again, please?" And he declared in open court, and I've got the transcript. It's just unbelievable that it's guilt before innocence. So thankfully, that type of lunacy has been shot down by Justice Bradley, and AHPRA needs to pull their head in from that lawlessness, and maybe they have and they will from this judgment from tomorrow.
So I guess if and when the money hits you, I'm being a bit pessimistic. I'm sure that you will get the money that you are owed. AHPRA are going to have to be reaching into their own pockets to pay some fairly hefty costs to Queensland and to the courts. Of course, are you able to charge them for your time and your effort that you put in to prepare for this case, or is this something that just goes under the Mental Health Act? Oh, yes, Your Honour, I had to go and spend 2 years of my life trying to figure out how to tell the truth in your language in a court. Are you worried you're not going to get the right sort of compensation?
Well, yeah, that's an open question, Carl. No, I'm not worried at all, because whilst it would probably be difficult to get any costs apart from like my filing fees and other incidentals for my Supreme Court matter, because I did not engage any lawyers in the Supreme Court trial. There is certainly compensation owed to me, I believe, for the 2 years and 4 months of not being able to work in my own business, because I was running my own business as a doctor, not being able to work as a GP registrar in other people's businesses, not being able to help people in far north Queensland as a telehealth doctor, and all the loss of earnings from being kicked out of the RACGP and any potential future career progression, et cetera, plus the imposition on my character and my standing in the community, et cetera.
Which is
it goes on and on. In fact, the biggest thing that one of the things that offends me is that the college, instead of kicking me out, their job was to protect me, because I was a junior doctor, even though I'm not young. I started medicine late as a graduate medicine entry student. Their job as a junior doctor was to guide me, support me, protect me, provide, that counselling support. They just kicked me out and said, don't come back, even if you're innocent. So I think that they owed me a duty of care that failed me. And the Medical Board of Australia members may even be personally liable for the harm that I've suffered, because the justice in my matter found that they are not immunised by their actions in this decision making, because they acted beyond law, beyond powers. They've gone completely beyond the scope of what they should have done. And as Justice Bradley said, they didn't accept it or reveal it until the very end. Not even in the trial, they only conceded their mendacity, their evilness, 2 weeks after the trial ended. It's just disgraceful. So they're going to be having a very difficult time defending their actions in court in the future, I think.
Do you feel that if they hadn't have admitted that 2 weeks after the trial ended, that the judgment for them, I get the feeling they were sniffing the wind 2 weeks after the trial ended, and they've been able to placate some of what the justice was going to hand down or say, and been able to mitigate the damage in some way. I honestly can't see how they can recover from this. If they were reasonable human beings, they would be too ashamed to show their faces in public. But as we know, they are very unreasonable human beings, and showing their faces is the last thing they would ever want to do in public. Then what sort of hope do you expect going forward? AHPRA are going to give you assistance-wise, sorting out these matters, but then looking further ahead, let's say politics doesn't work out for you. Is this going to be an ongoing fight? Will you be the overseer of the medical system before we're done here?
Well, if they come after me again for speaking freely like I'm doing today with you, or I did with Michael Griffiths, or anybody really, they'll have another fight on their hands. And if they want it solidified that freedom of speech is a value prized by the Australian community, by the medical profession, by me, and by the judiciary, then bring it on. And I will keep defending my right to speak freely about concerns my patients have for the rest of my life. And in the meantime, I think that AHPRA are ashamed because they did not send the barrister who accused me in open court of working illegally as an unvaccinated doctor. He didn't even turn up for the judgment hearing. And he had to concede in those documents after the trial that when he accused me in open court of working illegally as a doctor, he was in fact wrong. And AHPRA had known for more than a year that I had vaccine exemptions for the COVID vaccine to work legally as a doctor. And so their accusations, as the justice found, were completely unfounded. And now it's being reported all over, even the mainstream media news. The Courier Mail's all over this. The Epoch Times has contacted me. It's over Google News. So I'm really hopeful that this message of freedom can spread around the world, Carl, and we can get the message out that doctors and nurses, whether in Australia, New Zealand, or England, anywhere, don't need to be afraid anymore, because the judiciary, amazingly, can have our backs if we hold them to the principles of law, to the principles of law, to the principles of law.
Gavin's asking a question here. Are you going to refer patients to mental health now, given that they've got no rights under anything else? But your win certainly can be used in a mental health argument, particularly for support, ongoing support, or compensation, because the attacks that were leveled against not just yourself, but many other people in the community who chose not to be jabbed have had such severe mental health implications that some of them are no longer with us. And that is by their own hand. Now, these are important questions I gathered down the track, and I'm not going to try and get you to answer them. But while there is a toll of people who have passed due to the decisions made about the spicy dart, there is a much greater toll of those who have passed or suffered ongoing debilitation, mental health, illness, and whatnot, because of not just their decision to take it, but their decision not to take it in many cases. And this is, I think, your decision. While I haven't read the transcript and I would love a copy, I would suggest that the justice has opened the door there, that your case has laid open AHPRA's clear, wanton disregard, I think, for people's actual health. They've just taken a narrative and run with it and tried very hard to shut anybody up who wanted to say different.
Yeah, indeed. That's even what the justice said during the trial. He was very angry at the King's Counsel for AHPRA. They had many lawyers in there trying to defend themselves, but the truth needs no defense. But the judge kept asking them, how has William harmed patients, because AHPRA kept going on and on about how I'd threatened the safety of Australia, and I threatened these policies, and I threatened the government, and done all these bad things. And the judge said, hang on a minute, what are you actually talking about? What has he actually done? And the barrister kept saying, he's criticised the government, he's criticised the vaccines. And the judge was like, no, stop it. Stop telling this. Tell me what he's done to patients. And he's like, and the barrister said, like, no, he's harmed confidence in the system. He's harmed confidence in the government. He's like, and the judge almost like pulled his hairs out. He's like, no, stop it. Can you just shut up? Like, you have never, AHPRA, told this court how William has even been alleged to have harmed a patient. So, and that's basically what he wrote in the judgment in a few paragraphs, that the allegations against me were unfounded. There was no harm. He was speaking freely at some conferences, online, on shows like this. I never had a patient complain against me. It's just AHPRA. It literally was AHPRA who complained against me. One of the 5 complaints lodged against me was revealed in court as to come from the state manager of AHPRA herself. Carl, it was revealed in the last days of the trial that she had lodged the complaint about me for protesting about AHPRA. She lodged the complaint to the Office of the Health Ombudsman in Queensland, who she then directed to consider jointly with AHPRA to then make the decision to refer it back to AHPRA, who then she wanted to refer it to the medical board to suspend me. I mean, it's the biggest setup in history, and it's all exposed. Wow. So if anybody wondering where the corruption and the spies are, and the psyops and the moles, they're in AHPRA, they're in the government, they're working to collude against the people. I was never a spy for the government or a troll or whatever it was. I was just a victim in all of this. I fought back. I won by exposing the truth. I didn't really take down AHPRA in the end. All I did was just follow God's advice and show the court and show the world what AHPRA was doing. And the judge said, yeah, these are pretty bad people, and ruled strongly against them.
Very strongly indeed. Very strongly indeed. And like I say, the implications of that decision, I think, are far-reaching for every doctor, nurse, medical person who's been affected by the decisions either foisted upon them or they've been cajoled into making in the last 4 years. I know you're a busy man. I don't want to hold you up on your Saturday afternoon, particularly as now you've got a political campaign to plan. So I want to wish you all the best with that going forward, particularly. And I've got to admit, I've been watching Gerard Rennick's People's First Party since he stood up and declared it a little while ago. And I'm very pleased to see the quality of people he's gathering around him for it. If you're one of them, then you'll probably get another vote out of me yet. Although don't go cutting everybody off at the Senate, mate. Got to get a few people in the House. We need people in the House. So... and I think you'd be a good man to stand in one of those House seats. So good luck with that. What is the plan? Should the cash get into your bank account?
And in the meantime...
Sorry, where you go?
I was going to say, if anybody wants to read the judgment, I'll post it up to my Queensland People's Protests website at qpp.life/legal, qpp.life/legal, and within the next hour, and people can have a read of the judgment there, or they can go to my X/Twitter profile at Dr. Billy Bay, where the judgment is there as well.
Brilliant. And I'll grab that link as well. We'll post it on Voice of Freedom and send some people over there from there if they can't find it at your place. Congratulations once again. Have you got a donation button over there on that side as well? Because I know things are tough at the moment for everybody at this time of year. It always is. And people like us find it very difficult to let people know. But it is Christmas, and we'd like you to be able to do something. So if people have got a dollar that they can share with you, is there somewhere they can donate it on your website?
Yeah, that would be very kind of them, but don't donate too much, because whilst I'm destitute at the moment, I'm sure to be wealthy soon, I would hope. But in the meantime, yes, it would be appreciated just to get me through this period till I'm back on my feet. And donations can be made at www.qpp.life for freedom life/donate. qpp.life/donate.
Yep, beautiful. And I hope you and yours have a very Merry Christmas. When the money finally does hit the account, what are you going to do first? What will you do? Will it be a holiday? Will it be a house? What will it be?
I want to hold a party to reward all of my supporters that have been there for me through all these hard times, Carl.
So Disneyland it is then?
Yeah, maybe Wet and Wild on the Gold Coast.
That sounds much more appropriate. Much more appropriate. All right, mate. You have a great Saturday. Thank you again for sharing your story with us today. Congratulations again. And I do hope a few more of those former doctor colleagues come out of the bushes and discover their own inner strength, their own humility. It's not about embarrassing them. It's not about pointing the fingers and saying you were wrong. It's now about getting them to stand up and see that AHPRA are simply an evil corporate administrative body that was not making any kind of decision based in scientific evidence or fact. And it took a good man like you and many others like you fighting around the country at the moment. And your win, that decision, I'm sure, will have implications in every other battle that's currently going on in courts around this country. So on behalf of all those people fighting those battles, thank you, Billy, for standing up and fighting yours. And thank you for fighting it in such a way that you didn't just win, but you kicked their ass.
God bless you and God bless all Australians.
You too, mate. Thank you for joining us on a Saturday afternoon. The now fully reinstated Dr. William Bay. And I'm not sure how Queensland Telehealth works, but I'm sure that if you can book him through Queensland Telehealth, he'll be the next doctor of favour, and I'll make a bloody fortune. And I'm sure he'll get enough hours to keep busy every day too. So you can certainly ask if you know how to go into Queensland Telehealth. Thankfully, touch wood, I haven't had to deal with any of that. So see if you can line yourself up for a chat with Dr. William Bay, if that is the way you would like to be. I'm not going to keep going on a Saturday. I think you've probably got a bit on yourselves. Have a great one, won't you? I will do a little live tomorrow. We're going out for lunch, another birthday lunch tomorrow. But there'll be a bit of live music going on, so it might make it difficult to do a live from there. We will have a chat, though, from somewhere around the smoker. And I'm not talking cigarettes, I'm talking barbecues. So that's coming up tomorrow. Have yourself a great day on the roads. If you're anywhere near me, they're a bit wet and slippery in places. Watch out. That just encourages the dickheads.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!